And the Republican National Committee's chief strategist and communications director, Sean Spicer. Sean, thanks very much for joining us.
Good evening, Wolf.
Don't tell me you're comfortable with Donald Trump's attacks on Jim Acosta and other working reporters who are simply trying to do their job at these events. I assume you're pretty upset about that, as so many of us are.
Well, violence is never acceptable, whether it's at a reporter or any other human being. All violence should be denounced. But ironically, I mean, it was Hillary Clinton's campaign, as we found out in a video today, that has been part of an effort with the DNC to incite violence at rallies, at Trump rallies. The videos that came out today show that there was a coordinated effort from high up in the Democratic operative world between the DNC and Hillary Clinton to incite violence. I actually am somewhat shocked that hasn't been covered more, considering all of the faux outrage from the Clinton campaign over some of the things that have gone on. The idea that they were part of a process and potentially that it went as high as Secretary Clinton herself, according to these videos. The lack of coverage of this and the questions that need to get asked and the answers that need to come should be almost the top story tonight as far as I'm concerned.
Well, we haven't confirmed those videos, but I will say this. When you hear some of the things that are uttered at these Trump rallies and the threats that are made at the working news media, the reporters, the photographers, the journalists who are there, it gets pretty scary from time to time. I know you've been there. I know you've heard it, and I know you want it to tamp down. Don't you think Donald Trump should tell the people at these rallies, look, these guys are just doing their jobs?
I think Donald Trump's got to get a message to get out. Again, I don't think violence has its place in political discourse. Equally, I think Hillary Clinton should answer the questions about whether or not her campaign and the DNC were actively paying operatives to incite violence at rallies. That, to me, seems like a very, very big question that deserves an answer.
And it's worthy of reporting, to be sure, and we'll follow up. Sean, you've been doing this for a long time. You're the chief strategist for the RNC. Do you acknowledge right now that Trump is behind in the polls?
In some states, sure, and in some states, he's ahead. But we have a battleground state strategy to get to 270 electoral votes, and I feel very comfortable with where we are right now and the momentum that this movement has to propel us to victory.
So what is your pathway? What is your pathway, Sean, to victory? Which battleground states do you project you'll win?
I think we're going to win Florida, Ohio, Nevada, Iowa. I think we've taken New Hampshire, Maine, too. If we add up all of those, and I'm just a little off on the math right now, and North Carolina, that gets right into there. And then we've got states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Virginia, others that I think are traditionally blue states. But the interesting thing about the map this cycle, unlike last cycle, is that states that Obama won twice, you look at where Trump's playing in, whether it's Nevada, Iowa, Florida, Virginia, New Hampshire, Maine, too. States that were twice carried by Obama. It's Trump that, in fact, has expanded the map and given additional paths to 270 that we didn't have last cycle.
Clarify, because it's obviously been a sensitive issue over these past few days, what are the grounds, under what circumstances would Donald Trump not concede?
Well, I think if it's a decisive victory, he's going to concede. I think he reserves his right, as any candidate should, as Al Gore did, to make sure that if it's a close race, that he can utilize the laws that exist to ensure that there's a recount and every vote is counted properly, whether that's military ballots or other absentee-type ballots. But I think he's going to make sure that despite a lot of pundits and media types proclaiming this race over, that every American, in fact, has an opportunity to vote and have their voice heard.
Do you think the U.S. election system is rigged?
No.
Because Trump keeps using that word rigged. You hear it over and over. You heard it again today. The system is rigged. The system is rigged. That doesn't spread a lot of confidence about our democratic process, does it?
No, but I think that there is a concern that he has as someone who doesn't run for office, and it's understandable. Obviously, a lot of people support this, which is that you have a lot of folks in the media, frankly, and a lot of pundits who have proclaimed the race over and said, you know, Hillary's up this much, you know, the race is over, she's beginning her transition, when in fact, again, even your own poll today shows it down 5. You, in your previous segment a few moments ago, talked about that we're up in a couple of these key battleground states and it's close in others. I think that what we want to do is be encouraging people to vote, to get involved in the process, not to this race over. And when you look at a situation that broke today where you see that Terry McAuliffe, one of the Clintons' longest time aides, is helping to funnel money to the deputy director's wife who's seeking the Democratic nomination for state senate in Virginia, it's a little shady to see $500,000 going to a candidate's wife when the deputy director is personally overseeing the Hillary Clinton scandal. So an issue
you're referring to the story in the Wall Street Journal, which I read very, very closely. This woman was running for the state legislature at the time. At the time, her husband, who was an FBI official, he was not in charge of that investigation, and she was a Democrat. She eventually lost the election, but she was a Democrat. What's wrong with a Democratic governor giving money to a Democratic candidate for office?
She was a first-time candidate running against an incumbent state senator, and they funneled $500,000 to her. I mean, that's a pretty big chunk of change for someone with no political experience, and again, whose husband just happens to be the number 3 and eventually number 2 person at the FBI. I think, but the problem, Wolf, is this: it's a pattern. Over and over again for the last 30 years, we've seen that Hillary Clinton has a level of one set of rules for her and one for everyone else. This Clinton Foundation, over and over again, we've seen deals, whether it's Morocco or Haiti.
Sean, I will point out, and I want to move on, that Donald Trump is a first-time candidate with no political experience either. He's doing pretty well right now. This woman did not do all that well, but Donald Trump is doing pretty well right now. He got the Republican presidential nomination.
Hillary Clinton did pretty well on that deal, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. All right, let's talk a little bit about draining the swamp. We keep hearing Donald Trump ask the American people to drain the swamps. The swamp. He's referring to what's going on here in Washington. As you know, the Republicans have the majority in the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. When he says drain the swamp, does he want to get rid of all these Republicans who have been around for a long time as well?
No, I think he wants to set up a set of rules. I mean, Republicans since 1994 have been talking about passing term limits and giving the American people more say in what's going on. I think when you look at a government the way it's been run right now, where you have, the IRS going off on random tangents against conservative groups, VA abominably running a program where veterans are waiting and dying for care, a government that's unbelievably unresponsive, that I think what he wants to do is set up a system where he can bring in fresh blood and make sure that Washington is starting to pay more attention to the frustrations and concerns of the American people.
Well, the Republicans who have been around for 3 terms, 5 terms, 8 terms, 10 terms, does he want them out? Because he wants term limits, but does he want these people no longer to run? We're talking about Republicans now.
Right. I think it's not a unilateral disarmament. He wants to set up a system by which both parties will ensure that fresh blood comes in, that we've got some turnover and some citizen-type legislators that get brought in. So it's not a question of one party or another. It's a question of making sure that we create a system that is bringing in people with private sector experience and a better understanding of what's being of the concerns and frustrations and needs and solutions that the American people are looking for.
All right, so let me just get you're the chief strategist for the Republican National Committee. Is the RNC in favor of what Trump is proposing, term limits for members of the House and Senate?
Yes, it's in our platform.
So you're with him on that. All right, Sean, I want you to stand by. We have more to discuss.